first of all, I just want to say the discussions that we've been having today, and some people had asked for advice about negotiating, and I want to recommend a book. It's called Women Don't Ask by Linda Babcock. And if you're a professor, you could recommend it to your students. If you're a student, I suggest you get it. I've recommended it for my female students before, and they've used it for negotiations when they got their first job or when they're asking for a raise. And it gives women tactics and techniques to use, because women are judged differently than men when they ask for raises. And sometimes if a guy goes in there and says, "I'm so great, give me a raise," they'll say, "Okay." And if a woman goes in and says, "I'm so great, give me a raise," they'll go, "What a bitch." So you don't want that to happen. And the book is really good. And also what it shows you is there's a lot of other things you can negotiate for besides money. So you can negotiate for more vacation time, or you can negotiate for better equipment or things like that. So anyway, Women Don't Ask by Linda Babcock. Very helpful. I want to introduce our panel. My name is Tracy Everbach. I'm from the University of North Texas. And I'm going to have each of our panelists just tell you a little bit about themselves. I am a former newspaper journalist. I worked for the Boston Herald for a couple of years, and I worked for the Dallas Morning News for 12 years before going back to school to get a master's and PhD. Now I teach at the University of North Texas, and I teach skills classes on journalism, like public affairs reporting. And then I also teach a class called Race and Gender in the Media, which very much aligns with the research that I do. So that is why I proposed this panel. And next we have Kelly.
Oh, hello. I'm Dr. Kelly Werder. I'm an associate professor at the University of South Florida over in Tampa. And I've been there 15 years. I earned my PhD at the University of Florida in Gainesville, right up the road. And what else can I tell you about myself? I'm the editor of the International Journal of Strategic Communication, and I've held several leadership positions in our department. I'm originally from Virginia.
Did you work in the industry?
I did, thank you. I worked in the industry for about 5 years between my bachelor's degree at Virginia Tech and earning my master's degree in corporate and professional communication at Radford University, also in Virginia. And all of my work really is in public relations and strategic communication. So yeah, about 5 years I served as a magazine editor and did some, covered the education beat for the local paper. I was kind of a girl of all trades. So okay.
Hi, my name is Noemi Marin. I'm from Florida Atlantic University. I'm a professor there, and I'm not from the industry, and I've never worked in the industry. I'm a professor of communication. I'm from the other side of communication studies, which is the National Communication Association, which includes PR and advertising, but I'm a dangerous woman. I'm a rhetorician. So I study discourse and political discourse in particular. Briefly about me, I had been the director of the School of Communication and Multimedia Studies at Florida Atlantic University for 3 years. I had been the director of the Peace Studies program, again at FAU, where I had been for a long time. I am the editor of the international online journal, Literacy and Technology. I am the president of the Romanian, this is my accent, I'm originally from Romania. So I'm not digitally native, but I am Romanian native. So I am the president of the Romanian Studies Association of America, and I have I'm a researcher at heart, a ton of research, but what I have the most, I would say, one of the things that I am proud of is I'm probably one of the very few female professors at Florida Atlantic University who received the Presidential Leadership Award. So I'm one of those people. Thank you.
Get very close.
Like this close. Okay. Hi, I'm Robin Goodman. I'm an associate professor in the advertising department at the University of Florida. Let's see, professionally, I've kind of done a little bit of everything. My undergraduate degree is from Missouri in magazine journalism, and yet I'm an advertising professor, and I've also worked in advertising journalism and public relations, so I'm kind of a jack of all trades. No broadcast, that's the only one I can't claim any experience in. I teach creative advertising, I teach research, I'm going to be teaching data visualization, and I also teach some visual communication classes when we can schedule those. And then, kind of how I kind of, from a research standpoint, my research has always involved, for the most part, women in some way, shape, or form, particularly looking at women body image. Right now I'm doing some stuff with cosmetic surgery and things of that nature. So I'm always kind of looking at women from those particular standpoints. So.
Our other panelist, Marie Santana, who was supposed to be here today, unfortunately has the flu, so she could not make it. Okay, so I just want to start this out by... Okay, let them use this one.
You have to hold your breath while they're talking.
How's that? Okay, so some of the themes that we have been talking about today are echoed in a little presentation that I put together before I came here. So I just want to go over some research, facts, and figures that will kind of give you an overview of what we're going to talk about here. So, okay, there was a report that came out about 2 weeks ago by McKinsey, which is a firm that does research into business. And basically what it found was that gender parity has not been released in the U.S. workforce, anywhere in the U.S. workforce. What a surprise. And what they found were that there were some specific barriers that are causing this. So one of the barriers that they were finding was the unequal sharing of unpaid care work, which I know came up in Judy's study as well. And when we're talking about unpaid care work, we're talking about taking care of children, we're taking care of elderly people, taking care of housework, those sorts of things. So they're finding that that is a barrier. The study also found that if there were gender parity, it would bring about $2.1 trillion in additional gross domestic product by 2025 to the United States. So basically, this is not just an issue of fairness, this is an economic issue as well. And it would bring 6.4 million jobs by 2025, this study found. Okay. The indicators of inequality in the U.S. Women are much less likely than men to hold leadership in managerial jobs. Exactly what you found, Judy. Women are much more likely than men to perform the unpaid care work. Women are much more likely to be single parents than men. And that is a big factor because women, end up doing that work. And if they're a single parent, that makes it even more difficult. We have a high rate of teen pregnancy here. Even for the Western world, our rate of teen pregnancy is very high. Another indicator they find holding us back is women have a low representation in political office. And if you've been paying attention to the presidential race and some of the things that are being said about Hillary Clinton, I think that's illustrated pretty well. And then violence against women is a major problem in society that holds women back as well. And, this is talking about women throughout all industries, not just communication industries. Okay, so if we're looking at the communication fields, we see here's the percentages in the different industries of women who make up these industries. As you can see, advertising is pretty 50-50. Public relations, most of the workers are women. Most journalism professions, most of the workers are men. And then if you're looking at, the film industry, only 9% of directors of top grossing films are women. And then if we're going even further, delving into the video game industry, only 12% of video game developers are women, which I think is important. I find a lot of my students are very interested in video gaming, and a lot of them are women, and they're distressed by the state of the video game industry. Now, as Judy mentioned as well, our students are 2/3 women and have been 2/3 women since the 80s. So when you compare the numbers of our students with these numbers, there's still this discrepancy that's been going on for more than 30 years. Okay. And then when we get to leadership, you can read these yourself, but you can see that when we talk about leadership, the numbers in percentages go way down. One of them that I find interesting is the advertising creative directors. A few years ago, there was a study that came out that showed only 3% of advertising creative directors were women. And then they had this conference called the 3%ers or something like that. And once they did that, it increased to 11%, which shows that, making noise can do something. But, when you look at TV news directors, radio news directors, editors of top newspapers, it's dismal. It's just dismal. And then in PR, most of the employees are women, but most of the managers are men. I also want to note that women of color, that's come up a couple of times in this discussion, but they're going to have double strikes against them because not only are they a woman, they're a person of color, which makes them less likely, to get paid much and to advance. Okay, so here's just a couple of studies that sort of get to the why. And so for journalism, I chose one that I did a few years ago with a co-author. And what we did was we interviewed women who had left the journalism profession to find out why they left. And we thought we were going to find, I left because I wanted to start a family. That wasn't the case at all. They left because they didn't feel like they were getting paid enough. They didn't feel like they were getting mentoring and encouragement. They didn't feel like they had the chance to move up. And they felt like they were pretty much second-class citizens in their workplace. So they said, forget it. I'll go get a job in law. I'll go get a job in public relations. I'll go get a job in teaching. A lot of them went to other professions that needed the same kind of skills as journalism. Now, it should be noted that these were women who had left, so they had, they were not happy with the way that they were treated. So there were plenty of other women who stayed who we could look at them too, I guess, find out why they stayed. Public relations, Aldori and Toth looked at PR professionals and found that PR professionals actually perceive women as better leaders than men. However, they think that women are held back because of the socialization that employees receive. Women don't have the traits that are seen as effective for leadership, which are transformational traits. They have transformational traits instead of transactional traits. The transactional traits are the ones that generally society sees as a more effective leader, whether that is reality or not. And then it's an advertising study by Karen Malia. She interviewed women in advertising and found that women were being held back from becoming creative directors because of cultural factors, stereotyping that women aren't good leaders, kind of similar to the PR. They were being held responsible for 75% of the home, child, and elder care. Same theme again. Organizational factors, and then the boys club phenomenon. So, what I'd like to do now is turn to our panelists and try to address these questions. And we will also, I'll have each one of them discuss this a little, and we'll also take questions from the audience. So, who would like to start?
I'm going to start with a larger question. I actually want to first start with thanks, because that's not just polite, but it's also necessary. I want to start thanking Tracy for putting together this panel. It's a first for me in Florida Atlantic. I've been in Florida for a long time. And then second, to thank the Lillian Copenhaver Center. This is also a first for me, so I really think this is a phenomenal opportunity, and I hope to see you soon again. The question that I wanted to ask, since I'm not neither a journalist nor a PR person, although I understand very well both, actually advertising probably the most, since I critique arguments, public arguments for a living, I wanted to address the third question there, which is about what can professors do. And I will indulge, if you indulge me in a three-part little answer, which is I'm going to use Susan's format of litany and then a little bit of presentation about some things that we do and then maybe some suggestions. So I'll start with the litany because it's important as professors of communication this time. I think we speak a lot about what is in the industry, what we do, but the truth of the matter is that the college students, both in the communication studies and as well as in the rest of the colleges, do go through an experience where gender is extremely important, not just for women's studies, but also many of the professors who are professionals in their profession, academia as professors, do have similar kind of issues about when they become leaders in the departments, when they become leaders for different societies, associations, professional associations that represent research as well as teaching in industry, actually. Pedagogic industry in Europe, it sounds better. One of the things that is amazing is the fact that the academic professors, women professors of communication, are still paid currently 85% of their colleagues. No matter how many PhDs, I happen to have 2, no matter how many languages, I happen to speak 6, no matter how well are you trained or traveled or published or anything, I'm still, right now, currently, my current director of the school had been offered a pay of 15% more than what I had been offered when I was the director of the school. So numbers do count, both personally, but I think that Susan is right on. These numbers really we have to look at them. There are very few studies about professors of communication, professors of advertising, professors of journalism, women, in comparison to we look at the industry, but also in terms of this kind of group who trains students to understand gender in those strategic way of leadership. The other thing that's also a part of my litany is some people call it fancier, like transnational. I mean, I don't know the terms in I'm just speaking from personal experience. I noticed that most of the women who are in leadership position, like I was as a director, look for a team structure that is horizontal. We always look towards colleagues who can help, colleagues who can adhere to our leadership because we need credibility and we need to solve problems fast. While I noticed that in the academia, which is a hierarchical and non-democratic no matter how we do it, it is very hierarchical, men are very fit in right away because they understand hierarchical structures of leadership and we don't. The third part is also, of course, about administration, and it's connecting to language, and Susan mentioned that a little bit, but because I am a rhetorician, I care a lot about language. We just had a failure, let's say, a situation in which the female president of a university did not succeed and had to leave that role. And everybody talked about it as she couldn't do it. It wasn't a failure of a singular person. It was a failure of a particular context. While as long as I have been in the American academia, I haven't heard anything about how we talk about mistakes or failures when it's a male professor. And connected to that, I mentioned before when I asked the questions about, I teach a class in communication, gender, and language, to the communication students, not to, and we have 1,200 students there, undergrads. So it's not a small venue. However, gender and communication classes are, with the exception of the ones in women's studies, are not considered part of the hardcore communication format, which is something that it's ironic when we strive for equality and equity of any sort. The other thing that I wanted to point about women academics in leadership positions in communication in particular are the dyad, the multiple roles as leaders, and one of them is the difference between a maternal role versus a leader as a strategist. It's connected to this hierarchy as a team versus a hierarchy as a structure, as a hierarchy as a format that male leaders are comfortable with. But I noticed, being not a 19-year-old, I noticed that everybody talked to me when I was the director as a waiting for some nurturing moments. And the truth is, you can't nurture when numbers have to be there, output has to be there, results have to be there first before nurturing. Unfortunately, you don't have the time to do all of the above. But the expectations for a woman professor is first to nurture and then to be as professionally standardized in terms of high competency as the others. Students even, I did a research on my own, students call themselves, they don't call professors males, they call them doctor and they give them the last names. But the professors females, if they are a little bit closer to their age or younger, especially assistant professors, they immediately rush into calling them by their first name. Therefore, there is a familiarity and a format of professional, public, and personalized versions of dynamics that really sometimes work to the detriment of professional training as academics towards the students who are there. Now, the other thing, which is just a brief one, is about another litany about professors in academia that are part of leadership teams, is of course once you reach professorship, you're okay. But what if you are a chair and you are an associate professor and you want to go up for promotion? And that I do know multiple situations in all fields of communication where the women chairs who are associate professors have an extra stress and an extra fear. Am I going to make it during this time to be a full professor? Do I have enough research if it's a research-bound institution? Do I have enough research while I have to solve all the problems from small to large in my department? And this is a huge problem for, and it hits the numbers, unfortunately, for many, many women who, they do not leave the profession, but they defer to becoming full professor because they cannot handle too much of this similar pressure. Now, I didn't want to spend all this time on the litany. I wanted to talk very, very briefly about 3 suggestions I think are, again, connected to communication behaviors that we teach about. One of them is, of course, networking. Women do not know how to network the same way. They do not network the same way that men do. We have different language, we have different body language that we are trained to say. And the disclaimers that Susan just mentioned about when you come and negotiate money, they are so obvious. Women fidget more, they negotiate with a much more nervousness that we talk about, but we don't train enough on that topic. And the other one, it's ironic, but it's true. Women do not know how to listen. I just learned about a research on the International Listening Institute. There is actually currently a conference going on. What it is that the women listen for cues that are considerably different word cues that men are trained to do. Remember, when you learn about women and men strategic approaches to life and professions, one is a task-oriented format, and the other one is, of course, more of a nurturing, relational part. The second, I think that networking should be something that we can think about as a possible investigation to where we could actually make some strides. The other one is, which I loved Susan mentioning, it's talk about it. I'm a communication scholar, let's talk about it. It's phenomenally important. And the other one is, of course, the freedom to make mistakes and accept mistakes as part of your journey. Then the last one is something that I'm speaking mostly to the back of the room with the students here. It's called confidence. It's very difficult to gain confidence if you see all the time that what you're trying to do is not necessarily approached the same way. But if I have faith in the millennials that they do have, or show me more confidence, and once they do that, I think we will be better off. So I hope that maybe not in 2 years, like Judy's next research, but in 4 years, the millennial will start showing off their confidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marin. Dr. Werder or Dr. Goodman?
Okay, yeah, it's fine. Okay, I can talk for a few minutes about public relations specifically. I think public relations is unique from some of the other disciplines in mass communications because we really have experienced a feminization of the field, and it's been going on for quite some time. We started talking in the 70s really and 80s about the glass ceiling, and I think everybody sort of knows what that is, that women in public relations in particular are only able to reach a certain level and not go above that, and it's generally a managerial positions they can't move into. This has been termed the velvet ghetto, and it's an interesting term because women are very good at public relations. As has been mentioned, we have a lot of the skills, particularly collaboration and facilitation, cooperative problem-solving skills that we seem to be sort of naturally good at. And those things have turned out over time and through a lot of research to be very important to the effective practice of public relations. So we're good at that. So it's upsetting when we're really good at this profession. But because we're good at it and because there's so many women in public relations, the feminization has really damaged the whole profession in terms of status, lowered status, and lower wages. And this has really, resulted in women not moving from what we call technical positions, technical roles in the profession, skills-based, not decision-making. They've really stayed in those technical positions. The percentages, I think, that we're given, 60% in the profession are women to 40%. In education, I think it's much more than that in terms of women. In our program in the Zimmerman School of Advertising and Mass Communications at USF, it's about an 80% female to male split. Consistently. And, just in my experience, I teach a lot of advanced classes, really the capstone class. I've been teaching the capstone class. It's a campaigns class. And the students work in teams. They are given positions. And there are a lot of women who choose to apply for account executive position, which is the main leadership role on their team. And they work for nonprofits, and it's a service learning course, and they do a lot of work. I've been collecting data for a while, not really related to feminism issues and gender issues and things like that, but more related to their service learning experience, in fact, and how they deal with group work and their social responsibility skills they're getting from the class. But what's emerged really are comments and things that they talk about their position and how the group worked in terms of their position. And I've just, it's been pretty drastic in terms of the occasions where there are males and they make these comments on, in terms of their experience and their leadership experience. They talk about power and assertive behavior and being able to take control of the group. And the women invariably talk about things like facilitation and collaboration and listening. I would disagree with you on that comment in terms of at least women in public relations. That is a skill that they seem to have more than men, and a lot of the survey research that's been done on the profession and practitioners, they tend to be good listeners, and that is one of the characteristics anyway that's come out. Another concept I find really fascinating that's more recent and sort of in the news a lot is this concept of the glass cliff. And it's become fascinating to me, in fact, and I constantly am looking for examples of this in practice, and there have been a few lately. But this is the phenomena really taken from the glass ceiling terminology, that women are chosen to perform in leadership positions under very different circumstances than men are. And oftentimes it turns out to be that the organization is a risky or compromised place. And the dominant coalition, or those leaders in the organization, determine that some change, drastic change in leadership is needed, and let's try a different approach. And often that's when they will choose a woman for leadership positions. It's happened in a lot of high-profile corporations, HP, Carly Fiorina, some of those, some cases you can track. But they accept these positions in times of great turmoil for the organization. And while it might be very practical or reasonable for anyone to fail in those positions, women are sort of singled out and highlighted in their failures. And that's, I think, a real thing to watch sort of across the board, and women in working women, career women, but particularly in public relations too. I think you'll see that begin to happen more.
Dr. Goodman, do you want to make remarks, or do you just want to?
Well,
Okay, whatever you.
some of what I was going to talk about has already been addressed.
You went out.
That's what always happens when you go last. Yeah, just a few things. Some quick notes, I guess I would say. See very similar things in advertising as you do in public relations. We're 85% women in our department. And one of the things I'll say anecdotally is that, those of you that are professors know this, that your best students usually keep in contact with you over the years. And so my best female students, now I have men, male students that are great too, but my best female students that kept in touch with me over the years, it's really interesting how many of them start pulling out of the rat race, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And it's all about one thing: children. They just can't balance it anymore. Many of them, matter of fact, I know one global marketing director of a major company that finally said, I have to stop. I travel all the time. I never see my children. And they're not willing to give up on that. One of the things that hasn't been addressed, and maybe I'm a little, I don't know that I'm better about this, but we talk a lot about millennials. You're great. You also talk a lot about boomers, but those of us that are Gen Xers kind of get forgotten. And one of the things that I want to bring up is that those of us that are Gen Xers, we grew up in the 80s, and we grew up with the myth of the superwoman. That was all you heard about. You can have it all. Mm-hmm. And we still have that in our mind, mm-hmm. but it's not real. You can't have it all. I mean, not in the way that it was presented to us. It is very, very hard to balance a career, with family. It just is. And when you would hear this in the news, it was just like you were super mom and you were super career person. It's just not possible. And so something always has to give. And so that's one of the things that I'll say anecdotally that I've seen is that a lot of those women, and these were the best and the brightest, have said, you know what, I opened up my own shop, I did this, I did that, so that I could divide my time. That's the only solution they could find, and that's a problem. if that's the only solution we can find, we need to speak up. And I'll get into, you know, one of the ways that we need to do this as well. But I mean, but we need to speak up. And you know, there is no reason why things always have to happen between 8 and 5 o'clock. We live in a digital era. Skype into meetings. You don't even physically need to be there. You know, I mean, why do we always insist on having meetings at certain times of the day? Or why do we insist on people
Will you
always
tell my
physically
dean
being
this?
there? Yep.
Sorry.
Sure, I'll tell your dean that because that'll work for us. But you know, there's no reason why we can't have a little bit more flexibility in the way that we do things and approach things. I will say I've been very blessed working at UF. You know, well, I have a male department chair now, but my first department chair that has been the department chair for most of my 15 years there, he was very supportive of family. He scheduled our classes around getting kids to and from school. You know, I mean, we would bring kids sometimes to our department meetings and things of that nature because you all know that sometimes you have a sick kid, you have a kid that's out of school for the day, you don't, I mean, who are you going to get to babysit? All your babysitters are in class. You know, so but they were never disruptive. It was never a problem. And that's the thing is that we need to start looking at things a little bit differently. And one of the things, you know, and I think that as women, we do need to speak up. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I mean, I've never taken no for an answer in that sense that, you know, I just go and do it. I mean, I'm just like, this is the way it's going to be. I mean, and you know, and Tracy knows me, and I'm not really like a, you know, that kind of, I mean, I'm pretty mellow about a lot of things. But you know, but when it came to those kinds of things, I was just like, there's no reason why this can't be. But I have also found that if you are reasonable in how you approach things and say, you know, X, Y, and Z, usually you get what you need or what you want or, you know, or desire in that case. The other thing that I will say is, as a parent of a 10-year-old son, I think we need to start changing how we raise our boys. And I think that by talking to them about our problems, you know, as females in professions, about the problems trying to balance families, about, hey, you know what, maybe we think about things in a different way. Maybe it's okay to Skype into a meeting or call into a meeting, and talk to them about these from the time that they're very small. And any time that they start, you know, talking about gender stereotypes, girls can't do this or something like that, you're on top of it right away, and you change their perception and your perspective on things. I think that is crucial that we do from a societal level. I mean, individually we can do the best that we can do, you know, but I think that that's really where and our girls, please don't, you know, I mean, I think that that's obviously key, but I think a lot of times we automatically think that. I mean, things have shifted where it's like, oh, girls can play with girl toys or boy toys. But it's still kind of like, people still kind of look a little funny if a boy is playing with a girl toy. You know, and I think that that's kind of, you know, it's shifting a little bit, you know, I think from the girl perspective, but I think we also need to, you know, we need to raise our boys to be men that understand this. You know, I mean, one of the most, you know, we talk about, you know, women, you know, if a woman editor or something like that fails, it's all over the news. She's fired or whatever. Well, you know, it's really interesting, all the media attention about Mark Zuckerberg taking paternity leave. It was like, you know, he's taken off how many months, or I forget how long he took off, but he took off a substantial amount of time. And, you know, so it goes both ways, and I think we just need, you know, that's one of the things. My last thing, I guess I would also say, is women that are in positions of leadership, managers, associate or full professors, those kinds of positions, we need to make sure that we're mentoring those that are below us. One of the best things that happened to me when I first came to UF is that I was asked to join something called WOW. All right, it was Women of Weimar. That's what it stood for. Weimar is the name of our hall that are, you know, of the building. And these were full professors and associate professors that once a week we went out to lunch. That's all we did. And, you know, sometimes it was just, you know, talking about random things, but it was also a good forum for me to, you know, what do you do when this happens with a student? How should I publish this? What should I, you know, those kinds of conversations. And I got all kinds of great feedback, and I think they learned from each other as well. It's like, oh, I had never thought about it from that perspective. I think that those kinds of situations are important. It's, you know, it's funny because when we would all kind of leave en masse, and there were probably, you know, somewhere between 8 and 10 people in this group, you know, it was kind of like, oh, there go the lady, you know, but we're like, yeah, they're going, you know, I mean, we also had that attitude of, yeah, here we go, you know, kind of thing. You know, and, you know, it wasn't like we excluded men, but, you know, that was kind of the idea, was it was like women empowering women. And I think that the mentorship gets lost. I think sometimes we forget, particularly when you get in that position, you kind of forget about what it took to get there and about how to help that you know, they may seem real confident, but they may not be feeling that on the inside, and that they sometimes need some help knowing how to talk about things, how to approach things. So I guess those are like my kind of added points. So,
And that's called networking.
yes. Yes.
Well, we'd like to take some questions from you. You have a nice panel here of experts who know a lot and would be happy to share it with you. So ask away.
Hello?
Yes.
So my question is kind of complex. I think it has to do with government and the rigid gender roles we have, because you mentioned that what if your son gets sick, or women not being able to really raise their kids. There's this assumption that women have to take on the caregiving role, and unfortunately we don't hold husbands to the same standard, and they don't step up as much as women do when the kids get sick or when family members get sick. So it's an extra burden on them. And secondly, again, I said it again, my stepfather's from Norway, and he is in love with his country and his government, and he's like, you know, in Norway, we're so family oriented that women get up to a year of paid maternity leave, men as well, and the men take advantage of the paternity leave, and it's helped their economy. It hasn't hurt it, but we keep on saying in government that, oh, if we give women and men, you know, a year off, it's going to hurt small businesses, it's going to hurt the economy, and we don't care about the family. And I don't know what we can do about that. You know, if we need to push for changes in government, or if we need to push for men to take, you know, active roles.
I'm going to answer first on Norway, and then we can talk a little bit, and I'll explain why. I'm from Europe, but not just that, but I visited a lot, and this is one of the questions that everybody says, you know, we want this, why is it not like in Amsterdam, or why is it not like in this and that country? Since I am an international scholar, I can say that. I want to say something about, we all have, anybody who lives from a different country, and FIU has as many diverse students, international students, as FAU does. I am you know, I was born in a different country, I completely understand. But I will tell you this, and as I was saying it to my students, you really, truly, as much as it's excellent to have that as a starting point of questioning like you're doing, it's really, not just complex, but impossible to compare. And I will tell you two things. Norway is a very small country with an extremely homogeneous population. 99% of the people are of the same sort, of the same history, of the same years, of 2,000 years of the same. So it's completely different than even South Florida, let alone, you know, Miami. I mean, even if we have so many, you know, I'm kidding. But the thing that it's impossible. So when you talk about parental, when you talk about this, these are very good policies, but they are applying to people who understand the same thing at the same way all the time for thousands of years. And it's complex this way. And that is something that I'm pretty sure your stepfather is missing, that understanding. But we really cannot transport what it is from one to another. And it's a barrier that calls for our enlargement of views, not of their, because if that's all they know, they visit America and they think we are living in Disneyland, all of us. So it's completely different. But I wanted just to say that because even if they do have wonderful social programs, it's a completely different population to which they can do it. And we cannot do that way, not even in a university that's so large like FIU.
Yeah, I will tell you one thing. Find the right man and be very picky. And I say that, I sort of really subscribe to...
Make sure he's a feminist.
Yeah, well, Sheryl Sandberg, the #2 at Facebook now, has written some really, you know, really good books about this. And one of the main things she said was to find a supportive husband, a supportive spouse, because in that way there's equity from the beginning, and you plan for that equity throughout your relationship and throughout your marriage. And for her, I think it really boiled down to that one basic piece of advice for young women trying to climb the corporate ladder today.
And we should probably say partner instead
Yes,
of man.
I tried to change that spell. Husband spouse.
I mean, I'll echo that. You know, choosing the right partner certainly is going to help all those kinds of things. You know, it's always, you know, I'm going to go back to kind of how we're socialized. Because the way that we're socialized as boys or girls has a lot to do with the way that we see things as we are as adults and in the situation that you're talking about. So I'm just going to give you an example. I'm kind of throwing my husband out there. All right, so, well, he's not watching, so we're okay. So I remember that he was in charge of picking up the kids one day, and he was like, Robin, I need you to pick up the kids, you know, today. And I go, I can't. I have a dissertation defense. That's not something that you can just reschedule. You know, I was like, you know, suck it up, buddy. You got to figure this out. And he was just like, and I said, just tell him you can't be at the meeting or take the kids to the meeting. And he looks at me, he goes, I can't do that. I go, I do it all. I have to do it all the time. And he just stops and looks at me and stares. And it was like a light bulb clicked in his head. I mean, I swear that he would never say that, but it was just like, all of a sudden it was just like, you know, and I do understand that from the way men are socialized. And he's an engineer, so he works in a bastion of malehood. I mean, you know, really. And I understand that. But I mean, but that's the thing is, as both men and women, we need to question the way things are done. You know, things aren't going to change unless we question it, and unless we ask for something different. You know, I mean, it's no different than asking for a raise. Ask for something different. Ask for something better. That's my answer to you.
I'm going to share something that I did last week that I was telling Robin about. There's a big banquet going on tonight at my university that I'm not going to. But the people who are planning this produced the list of the speakers. And out of 20 speakers, 4 were women. And I couldn't believe it because, you know, most of our students are women. And I figured, well, these people know. So I raised a stink about it. I said, well, you know, what kind of message are you sending when you're only 4 out of 20 are women, when most of our students are women? And so I said, well, don't worry, I'm going to help you for the future. So I sat down and I put together a 9-page list of professionals in the communication industries that could come in and talk. And so they have it now, so we'll see. Go ahead.
Do you mind if you use the mic? Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Students online. Oh, sure.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Krista Williams-James with the Women's Media Center, and it's been a very
Yay.
interesting discussion.
I love the Women's
Yes.
Media Center.
Thank you, and we love you, Tracy. We've used your research in our Status of Women in Media report, and
good.
so keep doing the great research. But I am curious about, Tracy, in your presentation, you mentioned transformational and transitional leadership qualities. Can you explain more about that, what those differences are?
Okay, I'm not the expert on this because I didn't do the study, but the way I understand it is that women have a more cooperative kind of leadership style where they're more willing to take input before they make a decision and be more open, whereas men are more hierarchical and also are more, thank you, authoritarian, good word, more likely to just make the decision, you know, I'm in charge, I'll make the decision instead of getting input, which some people perceive, because of socialization, as that's a more leadership style, you know, corporate world leadership style. Because most companies have that kind of leadership rather than the more cooperative kind.
Yeah, here, I'm sorry.
Oh, she's got it. She's
I've
got
done
it.
a little bit of work on
Kelly!
this. NPR, sorry. I'll just read them because it's easier. Transactional leadership styles based on economic exchange. It uses existing organizational bureaucracy. It's very policy-oriented, and power and authority are used to maintain control. And it's unlikely to produce change because it does not reward ideas that are incompatible with existing plans and goals in the organization. So it's sort of against, anti-change. Transformational, on the other hand, is just the opposite. It's based on social exchange. It appeals to followers' ideals and moral values. Obama ran as a transactional leader, and Clinton, in the last election anyway, Hillary Clinton was really pigeonholed as a policy person, a transactional leader. I use those examples in class. Now, the interesting thing really is that the research suggests that one is not better than the other, and they should be used situationally depending on what the circumstance requires. And there's really sort of the research suggests they're both as effective as the other depending on the situation. So the best leaders are able to use both as the situation would require. And in PR, by the way, we found sort of an additional hybrid model called an inclusive leadership style that's really about collaboration and really brings in that boundary spanning role that the public relations practitioner has in terms of walking the boundary between working for the organization and advocating for its best interests while also working to support the stakeholders' best interest as well. So.
It's a very known site of these two, whether this comes from a solid research in communication by Julia Woods, and it's at the core of even intercultural communication and all the differences. So it's not just in one particular field. The transactional and the transformational come from two different formats of socializing and behaviors that are, one of them is about, it's relational, which is more transformational related, based, and the other one is more task oriented. And these are socializations that had been in place for women and for cultures of gender and cultures of different countries all over. So the research is solid in that, and it's not going to change those styles. It's just that it can be applied with more of an understanding of learning how to do both rather than exclude the other one.
Hello, my name is Solange Tiva, and I'm the president of PRSSA here at FIU. And I wanted to elaborate on a few things, and I'm going to try not to make it really long. As a leader, and I do consider myself a leader because I have an e-board of 17 great individuals. Only 2 of them are men, and they're great. But I definitely, they're great. I wanted to express my opinion on the type of leadership that takes place with organizations, and I quickly learned while being president that there are certain type of leadership styles you have to apply with different individuals. And as an example, my creative team communicates completely differently than my social media team. They're just more analytical or less interactive. Some of them network more, some of them are less assertive, more aggressive. And as a leader, you need to learn how to not take it personally, I would say, especially since we're all women. And we tend to, there's a lot that gets in the mix of those lines. But I think it's really important to not really say that a leader can't be assertive, because I feel like I'm really hard on them. But you communicate why. It comes from a good place, and sometimes there are individuals that need you to be a little bit harder on them because they need it. They need that extra push. And there are some individuals that they run and you don't, you have to catch them instead. There was something else. I wanted to elaborate on your thought. We said something about trying to find a good partner, and you said something I didn't like hearing. You said it's impossible to have both. I'm a true believer that you can have a career and build a family, but when I get there, I'll reevaluate. But I feel like I've had a lot of peers and a lot of friends that have sought out advice on personal issues, like, as millennials, the dating scene and, trying to find someone at our age is completely different than Generation X. And I I feel like we need to be really honest with each other when we talk about those issues, because we need to hold ourselves to a certain standard in order to understand that that's the only way that you'll find a partner that will help you, and understand that they need to support your career goals also. And I feel like a lot of women and a lot of girls my age, I mean, I'm 25, so women my age, but they settle and they don't understand that in the long run, when you're 45 or you're 35, it's gonna affect your career also. And we kind of tend to like hide away from it, you know, you don't want to say your opinion on it, but I find to be, I'm really honest with people, and I feel like if you don't hear it from someone professionally, or let alone personally, you're never gonna take the time to critically analyze the fact that whoever you're with now or determined to be with now is gonna affect your career later on. And I just kind of want to know I mean, I'm asking for advice because I find it really difficult to communicate with women and, you know, and say, there are certain things in your personal life that need to change before you can ever take yourself kind of seriously, professionally, because it's really difficult for us to stand up for ourselves, and then on top of that, try not to make it sound like an excuse, because we are women. We have responsibilities at home with our family and not just our professional careers. So how is there a better way to communicate that with my peers without making it sound like, you know, fix your problems first and then
I think you're going to be our boss someday.
It's really thank you. No, it's really difficult because you tend to care about these students. I see some of these girls more than I see my family. So how can I take that next step, not just now with my organization, but I guess professionally, to be able to sit with someone and say, from, you know, my perspective, I feel like these are certain things that you need to address personally before you can.
It's not your job.
What if it affects the job?
Oh, you mean someone you're working with?
Yeah.
Want to take that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but this is, you know, here's what I'll say in general is I'm a firm believer that if you're honest in the approach you take toward the person, given their personality, I mean, you can address those things with people. But it also depends on the situation, because there are some things that in a business setting you legally can't be really having conversations about. And I didn't mean to dash your hopes on having both. I have both. I have 2 children. And I'm at a Research One university. I mean,
It's because she made her husband take them to that meeting.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it. No, what I'm saying, I probably should explain a little bit about the myth of the superwoman, because unless you all wouldn't understand. But it was the idea that you could be like the 1950s mom,
Right.
plus high-powered career Wall Street type of woman, and combine those two, and no.
The problem was that it didn't include the man or the partner in it. It was just you were supposed to do
Yeah.
everything. You were going to
be it
cook
all.
dinner. You were going to take care of the kids.
Yeah.
You were going to work. You were going to.
Homemade dinner, no less. And you ground the flour. No, I mean, it really was it was like this just ridiculous kind of myth. And that's what we kind of grew up with, is this idea that you could be that person. And the truth of the matter is there's going to be give in lots of places. I'm not the perfect mom. I can't go to everything, I can't make it to everything. Matter of fact, I'm missing my son's soccer game today. I can't make it to everything on that end. And I'm not perfect in work either. I don't get as much research done as some other people do. Why? Because I'm trying to balance mom and wife, for that matter, with the job. And so it's a balancing act. But those of us that grew up with that myth, it's really hard because you feel like you're a failure a lot, because you have this, you can be this. You were told this, like your whole, time that you were growing up, that you could be this. And now that you're there, you're going, no, that really doesn't work that way. Or if you're going to be that, you've got to have more than 24 hours in a day, or you have no free time, downtime, you don't sleep. I'm sure it's possible, but literally you wouldn't be able to sleep in order to do it. And I like to sleep personally, so, I guess that's what I would tell you is, but, the thing is like where you're at right now in your role, here in PRSSA, you have a lot more freedom with the kinds of conversations that you can have with other people. You know, when you get into work with colleagues, people that are lateral to you, you could have those kinds of conversations with. But if you're in a management position, you'd have to be very careful about those kinds of conversations and how they might be construed or legal action taken, or I mean, it gets trickier. But I don't think it's a bad thing to have those kinds of conversations. And you sound like you're a very good reader of people. Yeah, and so you probably already know kind of how to talk to the various people. You know, whether they listen or not is another story, though, I'll say.
I have another very quick answer in addition to what Robin had said, which is wonderful. Stick to the issue. If you ever have conflict, I mean, when I became the director of the School of Communication and Multimedia Studies, it's a large unit. And it's a 4 programs, bachelor and 3 master's program. And everybody has a story, and everybody has a personal life, and everybody has a personal conflict with somebody else from the same building. So sticking to the issue is what leadership got me through, not, I mean, as much as I do want to hear and listen sometimes to what people have to say personally, what my advice, stay in, stay out, is not worth it. The sticking to the issue as a leader is the thing that actually gets things done. So at the end of the day, you won't change somebody else. At the end of the day, you need to do your job well.
All right, we're going to take 2 more questions. So.
This is actually more of just a comment on the recurring theme of choosing the right partner and having those conversations, and the myth of the superwoman. And I think that we've seen that the slow progress, there's been the glass ceiling, and I think that women being mostly responsible for the care of children, of other adults in the home as parents age, is one of those things that if we don't talk about is going to be one of those things in 30 years that's still going to be the same. And so I've been trying to find this study since Dr. Goodman's remarks reminded me of it. They did a survey of millennial men and before and after marriage and the birth of the first child, and 53% of men, the millennial men, before the child was born, expected, oh sure, it will be an equitable arrangement. After the child was born, that number dropped to 8%. That they expected, everyone else expected that the woman would be the primary caregiver. And so if we don't have those conversations like, I'm at my dissertation, you have to figure this out, that's going to stay the same. And so it's really important to have, I think, those conversations with our partners. Maybe not an appropriate first date question, but, maybe somewhere approaching, some of those decisions that if we don't have those conversations, it's not going to change. And it's about, being assertive in your career and also being assertive in your home life as well, I think is going to be really important. So.
Last question.
Actually, I just have to thank you. My name is Diane Lynch, and I'm the president of a little women's college in Columbia, Missouri, Stevens College. And I have been listening to this. Yeah, yes, right, Mizzou. And I just have to tell you, I am, like I said, the president of this institution. All of our deans are women. I have a management team of 7. 6 of them are women. We have 1 male on our team. His name is Mark. He wears a bow tie and grins. He's our IT guy. We are, and I would tell you that having spent 7 years in an entirely women's environment, we spend I think we have a quick tendency to assign so many of the characteristics we've been discussing to gender. And it turns out that I'm in an entirely women's environment, and we have personality types that interact and that lead and that behave and have different values, just like you would if you're in an all-male environment. I have women. I have a CFO who is the most linear, direct, male thinker I have ever seen in my life. She happens to be a woman. But it doesn't mean that she doesn't have that leadership style. She does. And so we have a tendency to sort of separate men from women and gender as the determinant and socialization. And it is socialization, but it's about what society you are a part of. And I would never have anticipated this when I came to Stevens. No question there are things about women that are different. And yes, I do think that the male standard is transactional.
in terms of the way we, outcomes driven and all of those things. But it's also personality, and it's about the culture that you join and the choices that you make. And of all the women on my team, every single one of us has the primary career. And every single one of us has a husband who over the time of her career has chosen to be the secondary. Every single one of us. And so, yes, they take care. My husband, I have an 18-year-old daughter, I have 4 children. And you can have it all. I raised 3 of them as a single, 2 of them as a single parent. But I have an 18-year-old daughter, and my husband has been her primary caregiver since she was 11. And he is at the soccer games, and he does take her, and I'm going to be this weekend taking her to USC, where she's going to has her first student day. So I'm taking time off to do that. But you can have it. It is about who you choose. But it's not just about gender. Characteristics and leadership style and interpersonal style is about the environment you choose to involve yourself in and the person you are. And so when we oversimplify, I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice, because you go into an all-male environment and you assume immediately that this is how this is. It's not how this is. It is individually. It's about taking everybody one person at a time. So, and if you want to work in an environment where women actually are in charge, come to Stevens College.
She also allows students to bring dogs on campus.
What did she say?
She said students love to bring their animals. Okay, well, thank you so much to the audience. We appreciated your questions, and thank you, Lillian, for inviting us. This was really beneficial.